Hello, hello, hello. So excited to dive into our habits training. If this is your first time in our habits better than before experiences, awesome. Make a comment, say hello. If this is your fourth training, if this is your 14th training, again, this is going to be new content that we're going to dive in specifically about creating the best version of yourself. And we're going to lean into habit formation for this training. So I'm Connie Kircher. I serve as an elite entrepreneur coach. Very, very excited that we're teeing up a just 5-part series, if you will, for this training where I'm going to lean into 2024 research. And so I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen so that you'll have this. I would definitely recommend that you have a pen and paper beside you so that you can personalize and customize some of the examples that I'm going to provide for the training. And then, of course, if you have further questions, I'm always available via an email or a private message or a message through social media. So I am going to share our screen sooner than later here. And then I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we all have access to see the actual slideshow here. So let me move this down and move this part. Here we go, slideshow and this. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So the 5 strategy for building healthy, sustainable habits, okay? Those are the two key words there. Not strategies for building habits. We're not diving into that in this training. What we really are leaning into is healthy and sustainable so that these do not just become something you do for 14 days, something that you hold a high guilt against you not doing XYZ healthy habits. So the sustainability part is very intentional for tonight is I want you, no matter when you're watching this training, have longevity in this better version of yourself. And I want it to add to your mental well-being, your physical well-being, your financial well-being, and it be a healthy conduit for that, not something that retracts or feels like an additional stressor. That's not why we do habit formation at all, okay? So let's go ahead and talk about what the desired outcomes for tonight will look like. First and foremost, I want you in this training to know and become more self-aware of where you stand in these 5 strategies. So I always say the very first part of internal locus of control is the self-awareness piece. So you're going to be able to do a beautiful kind of check-in for yourself as it pertains to habits. Second is I am going to share with all 5 strategies the new research that has come out for this year, because we all know that there's been a ton of podcasts, a ton of books, a ton of bestsellers that all talk about this piece of habit formation, morning and evening routines, productivity as it pertains to habits. I'm going to lean into why these in 2024 are the top 5 strategies. Third outcome for this training and focus will be, what does your healthy habit culture look like? Because mine will show up differently than yours. It's going to depend on the stage of life you're in. It's going to depend on how much responsibility you have on your plate right now. And it's also going to depend on, there's a real factor in if you've not created some momentum in habit formation and you're at ground zero, you're at the beginning of the journey, there is this phase where it takes a lot more intentionality, brain power, cognizant decision-making processes before it moves to more autonomy. So you need to gauge as we go through this training, where are you at in that cycle? Because building a healthy habit culture for you will look different as we go through those 5. So that is the part where it's going to have to be customizable. You will have to make that personal, and it will have to be driven from where you know you are and what capacity you have to dive into creating new habits for yourself. And then last but not least, I think the kind of, bread and butter of tonight's training is, well, how do I create these 5 habits? So these 5 strategies are going to break down. And more importantly, I'm going to give you some really fruitful examples of why you would lead into the creation of these habits and how and what that would look like. So let's just go ahead and go straight in to number 1. Strategy 1 is what I am calling implementation intentions. Okay, I'm going to put the little box down here so I can see you all. There we go. Very intentional that it's implementation intentions. This strategy really involves you making sure that when you perform the new habit, It's actually in a specific plan when and where. Okay. The way I like to coach this for everybody is it is if and then. So look at the example there. If it's 7 p.m., then I will go for my 15-minute walk. So it's a trigger based on something you've already predetermined. Write that down. Strategy one, when you do implementation intentions, is it is not you are hoping you're going to build that habit or tracking that habit on a habit tracker or setting even the intention only. It is when I implement it is the intention. So I love using the plan of if and then. So if I had X amount of dollars in my bank account, then I will do X for savings. So something predetermined needs to be the indicator or the trigger that is not dependent on circumstances. It's not a sliding decision for you to make to then build that next habit. So you could say, X amount of dollars in the bank account. If it gets to that, then I put, X amount of dollars or percentage into a savings account. Let's go for entrepreneurs watching the training. If I go to 5 networking experiences for this month, then I get to, apply to be a speaker, or I get to, then do another step that you've been wanting to take action in, be more intentional about, get coaching around. But there has to be a predetermined outcome to then trigger the new habit. Okay. What I found is research, which is super, super cool, is that 91% have a more successful rate of completing that then habit than the 39, almost 40% of the control group, right? So that's almost double. That is truly double in, 4%, right? So think that through. For strategy number one, when it involves you creating the specific if, and then create on your dashboard or create on your planner or create on your Trello board, then this gets to happen. My encouragement is that you cadence that once a month. I don't think it's very realistic to have 5 different if dash then implementation intentions every week or every day. I think that is going to be not sustainable and not healthy, right? Hence the training title for today. So if it's 7 p.m., then I will go for my 15-minute walk, and you could run that through for a month, right? So pick about 3 to 5 if then statements, run those through for the month, and then reset them as you close out every single month. So feedback again in the training comments. I'd love to hear any questions around that, any ahas. If you've actually done if then plans, how those have worked out for you. I always love to hear some successes on the personal note of those. So number 2, strategy 2, temptation bundling. What I mean by this, the definition of temptation bundling, by linking a desired habit with one that you already love and enjoy. You don't have to talk yourself up. You don't have to go into beast mode. You don't have to motivate yourself. You don't have to do any of those things. You already enjoy fill in the blank. So then you can increase your motivation because you make that new habit more appealing. So meaning whatever the temptation is to not do it or stay away or I avoid it because I just haven't built it into my routine, you pair that with an established activity that you genuinely enjoy. Okay. So the example I have here for the training is if you love audiobooks, well, then you're only allowed to listen to audiobooks when you're at the gym. If you love watching YouTube and scrolling on social media, well, then potentially the temptation of going out, down the rabbit hole for that will be I'm only allowed to do that when I'm in a walk or when I'm on the treadmill or when I'm, again, filling in the blank that some habit you are trying to build is always done with the one that is already established. Okay. The other piece I like for the example is I only get to watch my favorite TV show again while I'm exercising. So identify in this training things that you already love and then make sure that you pair them, bundle them is another way to say that, with some part of the best version of yourself that you are trying to build. I love that one, by the way. Strategy number 3. So this one I think is a much deeper motivation factor, what I always call intrinsic motivation to build these habits. All right. How do I do that, Connie? Is that you then go, I am focusing on the person the type of person that already knows these habits. Okay. So you focus on the type of person you want to become rather than the activity, the outcome. And that really leads to the part of the sustainability. Okay. So 1 and 2 are really focused on the building and creating and making sure you're bundling when it's, Temptationville, right? Number 3, the identity-based habit is that this is when you recognize I'm becoming a runner, right? So my example, I am a runner instead of I need to run more. Or I know that I'm an organized person or I'm a person that sticks to a budget. So instead of like I need to be budgeting more. See the juxtaposition on that. The research shows that you're about 32% more likely to stick with, to establish, to not even question that you are aligned with that identity. So like I, always am affirming to myself and saying, I'm a bodybuilder. I'm a bodybuilder, not I'm working on bodybuilding. I would aspire to be, I want to be healthier. When I step into that phase of I'm a bodybuilder, well, then I make choices and habits because it's identity based. Well, what would a bodybuilder do this morning for breakfast? What would a bodybuilder do this afternoon to take care of herself? So, using that third party technique to go, the way when you don't quite see yourself as that end result yet, take kind of 3 to 5 what I always say, kind of people that inspire you or the characteristics that you would like to emulate and create your own. Like that's how I want to show up as a CEO. So you say I am a CEO, these are the habits I'm building, instead of I'm trying to be a CEO, right? Like I'm in progress of a CEO. Just already get there, just already claim the identity part, and then start working from making decisions, from creating routines, from saying yeses and nos to when you continue to see yourself already in that type of person you are becoming. Okay. So I love this one because it's not just about the activity. It's not just about the checkbox marks that then kind of become just sometimes disengaged, right? Like you kind of like, okay, it's getting a little boring. My encouragement is that when you shift to go, this is my identity, you don't have an option to work outside of what you already say. This is who I want to become. I'm very clear on that. So the work on strategy 3 is getting clear on that. Okay. I love to coach clients to say, well, then write the 10 characteristics and habits that established person already has, not you, that established person, that, kind of avatar of the identity person that you are becoming. What does he or she already have? And put those habits as that's what I would then, overlay over my identity, how I see myself show up as a friend, as a partner, as a fill in the blank. Okay. So that's a great way to slow down, not just worry about, I'm going to add this to my plate, I'm going to stop doing this. Really sink in and go, no, this is my identity for the next 6 months or for the rest of my life, right? I had a client this past week at the retreat where I honestly asked, I said, do you see yourself as an elite entrepreneur? And tears came down and she said, no. And my encouragement to her is if you don't see yourself, AKA strategy 3, you don't identify already as an elite entrepreneur, all of the work around it, all the ways you set up your calendar, all the strategies we talk to will never be executed because you don't see yourself as a person that can even do that type of work or step up in that space. Okay. So really lean in. The title of that one again is identity-based habits. And it really is to make sure that you're anchoring in for the long run, not just a quick dopamine hit of I made a goal happen, over a short term. It's really you leaning into the long-term transformation. Strategy 4, take a deep breath. We're almost there. We're on the second side of all 5. Strategy 4 is social accountability. So you're 65% more likely to achieve that goal, complete that habit, reach that finish line when you actually share that with others. Okay. So there's so much research that says, I don't care how much you do that, in terms of your own vision board, or you have a playlist, or you follow people, or you read and you do personal and professional development, like watching this training, is that if there is not a shared what I call the front row of social accountability, that they know you are striving to complete the book. You are striving to do the half marathon. That piece is, as much as we may be achievers and as much as we may go, I absolutely want to accomplish XYZ. You are 65% more likely to achieve that goal when it is shared with others. Here's a real eye opener. You are 95% more likely to achieve that goal when you write it down and then when you share that in a social setting. So I'm not saying that you need to blast that all over social media. I'm not saying that it needs to be to everybody. I'm really intentional for strategy number 4, again, for the sustainability, is you share that goal, that progress, to your front row, the 5 people in your life that actually have your best interests in mind, that actually want to see you achieve that goal. It will not be what I call energy vampires for you. And they will support you when it gets rough at that 70, 80, 90, 100-yard line. That those front row people need to know you're almost there. You've got 2 more weeks. You've got 4 more days of the training. You've got XYZ. But if you just rely completely on self-motivation on that piece when you're creating these new habits, again, the completion rate of that is very low. Okay. So even for the best of the best, the strongest of the strongest, let your ego go to the side. You need to start joining the fitness challenge with the group. You need to start joining better than before 90-day habit groups like I have. There needs to be a aspect, right? It's not just arbitrary, that you have daily or weekly accountability. A tweak on that is sometimes I check in once a month. Once a month isn't enough. There's so much that happens in the 29 days in between that, that my encouragement and what I see has been most successful, again, for all of the distractions we have here in 2024 and the ways that we are time poor now, because we do have so many commitments and not enough hours, is the quote unquote perception of our 168 hours in a week, is that when you have that group, that daily or weekly check-in every Wednesday, you're able to not just go through the motions. You know that you are playing a part, even if someone else is sharing a totally different goal than you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be, specific to the same goals you're having. It's just the practice of, I'm holding myself accountable. I'm building self-trust. It really isn't about the conversation with the other person. It is about the internal conviction that when you say something out loud, it becomes real. And then that last point, when you write it down, it actually moves you into action. The brain actually, neural pathways start going, how do I figure those parts out? Okay. So you're 65% more likely to create those habits. Like, please start sharing into the group that you belong to, because that is such of service to you of how and what that can look like for the longevity. So I've been in a habits group now for years because I still want to dive into my 5 critical action steps, no matter how I feel, no matter how much I travel, no matter what's going on in my personal life, that I know that I can, put my head down at the end of the night and go, Connie, you did your 5 action steps to be congruent with yourself. Okay. That is the power of social accountability. It's not just I have a, buddy that checks in on me. The power is so deep in conviction. When you share that, it does start to transform the way you see yourself build these habits. Okay. Last but not least is the habit contract. And if this is something you would like, please send me a message. I'm happy to send you a PDF version that you can fill out and customize yourself. But for 2024 going into 2025, this whole representation of creating a formal agreement, right? We're kind of in the day, the era that we just breeze through contracts anymore. We just say, accept terms. I understand and accept terms to all of the apps we download, right? All of the paperwork we receive from our banking, all of the fill in the blank. We probably sometime this week, since you've been watching the training, have I understand the terms and conditions, and you clicked it to get to the next page. What a habit contract does for you is that it creates a formal agreement with the consequences of you not getting XYZ done and the perimeters of what you're trying to achieve. So I have this as strategy 5 because you've got to be really dialed in that you're all in on whatever habit contract you're about to, to go with. So it creates this formal understanding. It's almost this credo to yourself to understand that I will, donate, I will make an impact when I accomplish this new version of myself. What a habit contract, the way I coach it is whatever the incentive is to complete it, it needs to be bigger than you. Write that down. What keeps me going in my habit contract for myself is I want to leave a legacy for women business owners that have been through hell and back, that don't believe in themselves always, that have built great businesses and then have sold them, like on any part of where they're at in their entrepreneurial journey. I have a contract with myself to love on those women and leave a legacy based on the blessings I've received and the lessons I've learned. That is a contract I have with myself. Okay. So you can tell then the conviction I have to go, that's a formal agreement that I made with myself years and years ago that I would never deviate from. My encouragement is maybe you need to have that habit contract yourself. Maybe you need to have that moment where it is a declaration of if I don't do that, I'm not being true to myself. I'm not stewarding all the mentorship I received, right? So that may be a final strategy. That may not be just one you can quickly put into implementation mode. I honor that, but it is a tool. Okay. And tonight's training is about equipping you more with 5 different ways to build healthy and sustainable habits. And so by doing this, it really puts you in a place where, I have consequences in a positive way that, within my retreats or within my services, I'm then allowed to, for me managing my own business, offer scholarships when a business owner, needs or is looking for professional development funds or personal development funds. That has been something that's always been incredibly important to me, to allow a scholarship into networking groups that I fund completely anonymously, but I know that that would be a blessing for them. And then also making sure that I give scholarships into additional coaching and services. So you can tell that that is something bigger than me, right? So make the habit contract be something so much bigger. Make it attached to your family legacy. Make it attached to what your calling is, what your, true passion, strengths lie. Because when we just have habits attached to something that is aesthetics or what we think culture is telling us that we need to do, or someone else is saying you need to build these habits, I'm not the person telling you what habits to build in this training. You know what habits to become the best version of yourself. Please start making that formal. Okay. So as we wrap up this incredible, dense training, I want you just to be able to cross share and reflect. And this is where I do want you to potentially pause the video, look through your notes of where all 5 of the strategies hit for you. Because again, one of the outcomes is grade yourself on those 5. How do you feel like you check in from a 0 to 10 on all 5 of those? And then as a group, as an individual first, and then sharing that in the comment section in the group. Think of a time when you had strong habits, and I put strong habits in quotations because what I find is we sometimes over reflect to go, I remember before I had kids, or I remember before I was married, or I remember when life was easier. I was stronger, I was more dialed in, I had better habits. And what research actually shows is we put rose-colored glasses of how good we thought we were doing back then. Okay. I had strong habits when. I'm going to encourage you to go, that may not be completely true. What were the factors in that? Okay. And how can you go, nope, the future version of myself, I have strong habits when I'm doing this. I feel this way. I'm holding myself to these types of standards, right? Habits are just a way for you to make sure you're maintaining long term your boundaries and your standards. That all is what strong habits are, is that you are not taken down by the donut. You're not taken down by the credit card. You're not taken down by the new shiny entrepreneur marketing thing that costs $10,000. It's you really being ethical and honoring yourself is what strong habits are, right? So I hope that's a paradigm shift for you to reflect on is think of a time when you had strong habits, maybe on paper, maybe in organization, maybe your calendar felt like you had strong habits. But when have you actually been that person, the identity that you were completely congruent and you were in that flow? You showed up as that self, your best self. You weren't in fight or flight. You weren't in a place where you were constantly like, oh, it's just, I'm not in the groove. Like, how does that look? Lean into that. Identify what those characteristics you were doing, you were talking about, you were passionate about, you put your time towards, and keep building that for the future. Okay? So that's the activity that I want to leave you with in this training. I hope that that was powerful. I hope that that was meaningful. I'm going to stop the share so I can see everyone big screen here. Two final thoughts, right? As you go through those 5, pick 2 to start implementing, right? Because again, all of my trainings are to equip you in the long run, but I'm a big person of it doesn't matter if you just took fabulous notes until you move to the place of implementation and integration in your business, in your life, in your family, in your kitchen, in your finances, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Knowledge is, I could just keep talking for 45 more minutes. The meaningful part is for you to do the reflection into the implementation. So that's first takeaway that I want to make sure that you know from this training. Second is that if there is additional support that you're needing, that you've identified in this process, in this training, please send that to me in an email. Please message me that because that's part of you being able to identify this is where I'm needing group support. This is where, I do want that contract, that habit contract so that I can take that seriously, and actually, carve out an hour for me to do that. So pick the 2 that are going to be most meaningful. Again, in the season of life you're in, you'll always hear me talk about the season of readiness, right? Like, Connie, that may be a great idea. I want to take on that habit, but I'm not quite there yet. I need to get 2 more things off my plate, or I need to, work on 2 other areas to make sure that those are solid before I foundationally can go to another part of my life on the wellness wheel or however you look at that. So make sure that you prioritize just 2 of these. Okay. If this was a blessing, please give me thoughts, feedback. I always love hearing what your greatest takeaway is. That helps me shape the content and the examples more tailored to everybody. And I hope that you have a fabulous time implementing your 5 strategies for the healthiest, most sustainable version of yourself. Have a great night. Bye.